First of all, let me thank Metta Carter and Noha for this wonderful invitation. I'm also grateful to Mrs. Mandela to be here. I keep on meeting her at different places, at the university, at the church functions, and I hope one day she will invite me to the South African embassy, because we all, whether we are white, whether we are brown or we are black, we all are African. We come from Africa, all of us. And I'm also grateful for this opportunity to speak at this amazing event with a lot of wonderful music and speeches and soulful ideas. Metta asked me to speak about the role of media in creating an inclusive and harmonious society. Well, there are two different things. Media has never been able to or willing to create a good society, but let's see why. When we talk about media's role in creating an inclusive society, so I would like to start with looking at these two words, role of the media, and then what is a homogeneous, harmonious, and inclusive society. So let me ask a few questions first. What do we understand when we say the word media? And what role it can play or it doesn't want to play? And then what is actually a harmonious society? Because when you look at Denmark, it is all but a harmonious society. I can remember when I came to Denmark in 1970 from Canada, there was only one TV channel, DR. And of course, it had also few radio programs, but there was not that kind of media which we have today. And it went on until 1980. Color television came in 1970, but very few people had color television. I remember my first television was a small black and white TV. And people used those information which came through media to talk about the issues on the dining table and at work. But this monopoly of DR was broken in 1988 by TV2. At that time, I remember journalists were very respected and admired, but today we have radio programs, both DR and private channels. We have mainstream national television, dozens of commercial television. We have also international TV station. We can see CNN, BBC, and different international television programs. And of course, we use them for our daily information. And we also use them for entertainment and sometimes these cheap thrills. Add to that 10 national newspapers and several hundred local newspapers in Denmark. The story does not end here. The arrival of internet, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, live streaming, Snapchat, and Twitter, that has opened now so many avenues and unlimited scope of information. Unfortunately, not always the right news we want. Sometimes, or most of the time, it's also fake news. So what has happened today, that every Tom, Dick, and Harry has become a journalist, editor, a photographer, and a critic. And for some people it's okay, but I think that it has hurt journalism a lot. And the worst thing is that many serious journalists even use Facebook and internet to write stories instead of going and researching and talking to the communities and trying to find out what news are. When it comes to defining an inclusive and harmonious society, it is very simple to me. The World Summit of Social Development held in March 1995 here in Copenhagen, it established the concept of social integration to create an inclusive society, a society for all, as one of the key goals of social development. The Copenhagen Declaration and Program of Action, it was very clearly mentioned that the social integration through fostering inclusive societies that are stable, safe, just, and tolerant. I don't like the word tolerant, but let's say tolerant, and which has diversity as its basis. And this is not a pipe dream. Denmark has the means, and all that it needs is a political will and a media that bridges gaps and not create conflicts, which it normally does. As you all know, many media news stories focus a lot on negativity than to presenting the news it should be presenting. Now, this what I'm saying, I'm sure you all know, that influence of the media is alpha and omega to create a society. I say that because I have worked myself with the media for over 3 decades by making radio programs, being TV host on Bashy's Corner, as it was mentioned. I have contributed in Danish press from 1982 to almost 2000. Then I got tired and I left Denmark and I do my political work in European Union where they listen more than they talk. In Denmark, politicians talk more than they listen to people who want to exchange ideas with them. That is why I sincerely believe that an inclusive and harmonious society is possible if one important factor is in place, and that is namely an objective media. I wish there were many journalists sitting here so that we can exchange ideas, but I'm sure all of our guests today, they understand the things because they have experienced them, how media present the picture every day. And I also believe that without the cooperation of the responsible and neutral mainstream media, all efforts to achieve mutual integration, intercultural living, and a peaceful coexistence would remain an unfulfilled dream. For example, when I ask people, where do you get your information? Where do you hear these stories? I promptly get a response. I have read it in the papers, and I saw a documentary on TV the other day. So it means media does have that power on people's opinions. As the media has become more and more powerful and sophisticated, it has also become very commercial. And in the last 20 years, it has become very important for the victim of media manipulation, people like myself and many people of color in Denmark, to live up to the daunting task. Today, there are many groups trying to bring media's power to the attention of the public, but it's a very, very hard job. And I will give you a very concrete example. You know, all of you know Morten Messerschmidt. He is a politician, one of the very articulate politicians in Denmark. He was a member of European Parliament. I wrote a report about Denmark, and I was critical the way Danish politics, their policies are. He went to the European Parliament, imagine, and asked how much money I get as the chairman of ENAR, because I should not be writing negative about the country which has given me asylum. The man even didn't know that I came as a tourist, not an asylum seeker. Anyway, the European Parliament let him ask the Commission. The Commission said Mr. Quraishy doesn't get any money, all his work is voluntary. He didn't believe. So he went to Jyllands-Posten and wrote 2 pages, A3 pages on personal attacks. When I contacted Julian Posten, I said, look, the law allows me to respond. I was told, you're not important enough to get so much space as this gentleman has. So you can imagine when media has this kind of power, and many times when I was walking in the street, people say, hey, oh, you are the one who has stolen 2 million krona. I said, what are you talking? Oh, we read in the Julian Posten, Morten Messerschmidt said that you have been stealing money from European Union. So you can imagine not only character assassination, but how much media decides whom they will give space and whom they will not give space. I did also a lot of media monitoring, what's called media mapping. You know, you take newspaper, you listen to TV, radio, and then you see what are the trends, what kind of discussions are happening in Danish society. You would not believe that people like myself and other, they are only 6% of the total Danish population. But when we look at the media monitoring, 35% of Danish media coverage is about Islam, Muslims, ethnic minorities, black people, Africa, all 35% coverage. And out of that 35% coverage, 69% was negative. It was about crime, it was about rape, it was about cheating the tax, anything which, you know, media wanted to bring, and they brought it. So dealing with the media form a large part of our work. We try because we don't want to give up. If you give up, you are totally useless. So in this work, we use those information they send and try to talk to the journalist. But as you all know, many journalists have a very big ego. They don't want to listen, even if it is something which they should be listening. And what do they say when you criticize them or when you want to talk to them? They say, hey, media is just doing their work. They're just reporting and informing the public. And media criticism is a kind of an NGO. We don't take it very seriously. And minorities cannot expect special treatment. They should, be like a majority. And freedom of expression must be upheld at all costs. And you know that. I mean, we have seen this cartoon crisis and many other crises where Danish journalists have done a lot of damage to inclusive society by insisting on this so-called holy cow, freedom of speech. Now, seen from media's perspective, of course, whatever they think is right, they insist on that. But does it make any sense that you have a media which has so much power? Actually, it is a fourth state power. Should they have this kind of power that they can make or break people's lives? Or they can change the opinions of people from one end to another end? I don't know if you remember, in 90s, Extra Bladet had a very big campaign called The Foreigners, in this very big posters they had all over. And believe me, it changed many things from positive to negative within two weeks, So that kind of power media have. Now, my organization have worked with the media and worked out some guidelines. We think that it is very important that when media writes or broadcasts or makes a program, at least there should be some kind of guidelines. I'm not saying that they should not say or write or produce program, but there should be some kind of guidelines, and there is a journalistic guidelines. So I want to share with you certain guidelines. I have been talking with the media. First of all, we believe that freedom of speech is a basic human right, but so is the right to be free of discrimination from the journalist. Any reporting which enhances racism, perpetuates prejudices, and divides the society must be avoided. Secondly, reporting and covering minorities issues should be done with the same objectivity as journalists use when they write about majority. Journalists should be aware of the pitfall of their own Eurocentric upbringing, because most of the journalists, they don't know minorities, they don't interact with them, so they write from their own European perspective or Danish perspective. And of course, they are brought up in a society which has looked down at black people, at Africans, at Asians, at people from Arab countries as a second-class citizen, as an inferior. So that reflects in their writings and in their coverage. And I also believe that words like, I don't know how many people, we had a huge discussion about this word NEGER, N-E-G-E-R, which in America is N-word, But Danes say, yeah, it's not nigger, it's Nia. It's amazing how stupid people think people are, that they use this word Nia, which is equivalent to what the N-word, but still they insist. And I think that words like Nia or Perka, Islamist, ghetto, parallel societies, ethnic gangs, criminal second-generation immigrants, they are very loaded words. They are not simple words. These words have effect. These words, when they are listened by those people which these words describe, they find it derogatory and insulting, and so do I. And then the culture, religion, ethnicity, color, or nationality of people should not be used as an explanation of what an individual does. If I do a crime, I don't do because I'm a Muslim or I'm a black person or I come from Pakistan. I do because I'm an idiot or I have lost my mind when I do that criminal act. So when journalists always say a Muslim did that, it means they are bringing person's religion into the criminal act. And then another thing is, you have noticed that many journalists use undocumented figures and statistics. And I think that affects their own integrity. Many journalists don't realize that when they use this kind of information, they not only write wrong things, but they also attack their own integrity as being a journalist. And I believe that while writing about a particular issue, the journalists should go and talk to the communities themselves. Today, the journalists either use Facebook or take a phone and they will call Bashy Quraishy and say, hey, what do you think about the traffic problem in Islamabad? I don't know anything about traffic problems in Islamabad. I live in Copenhagen. But this is amazing that, and in Denmark, you have many, able young people who you can consult. And every time the journalists call ethnic minorities, it is about ethnic minority issue. It's not about defense or politics or economy. No, we are only good for talking about ourselves, not about the society we live in. And another thing which journalists should realize, that minorities lack socio-political, economical means to counter it. I cannot force a journalist to write something positive, even if they should do that. Therefore, we are not in a position to defend ourselves or complain to the journalist. And last but least, many journalists don't realize that the wound of a pen, of a word, is much deeper and lasts longer than a wound of a sword. It's a saying. And what they write, they should realize how much power this has to hurt people, to destroy their lives, but also make the society into a hostile society towards a certain section of people. Now, so how can we make Denmark, which is in fact a democratic, well-functioning, a beautiful society, that no longer is obsessed with the idea of a single identity, even less so by the quest of a strong sense of Danishness. I think the journalists, they should advance an identity which is inclusive and which is not weak, which is flexible and open. Then we will succeed in creating an authentic citizen in this society where identity will not be a marker, but just something you can talk about, but not use in daily life. When people ask me, hey, are you a Muslim? I say, no, my name is Bashy Quraishy. I'm a dark person from East. I'm an engineer by profession. I am working as a journalist. These are my identities. Islam is maybe 5, 6, 7, and also because I'm born in a Muslim family. But that's not my identity. But when journalists call me, they only call me and they say, we would like to talk with you about the Muslim issues. I say, hey, I'm not a religious person. Why do you call me? Call somebody who knows better. But it is amazing that some journalists are so lazy that they don't even want to do research, so that what they write is based on facts. If Denmark really wants to have a pluralistic, inclusive, harmonious society, it should have a cosmopolitan identity. And it should have an intercultural dialogue between minorities and majority. And I am sorry to say it has to do away with its European, Eurocentric identity, say we are white, we are Christian, and we are Danes, and everybody else is a foreigner. That idea maybe was good 100, 200 years back, but today it's not applicable in today. So all in all, media in this time and age has such an influence on public opinion that we all depend on it, on their goodwill and cooperation, and that's why they have the biggest responsibility. John F. Kennedy, he put it very beautifully. He said, to those to whom much is given, much is expected and required. It means if you have a power, you should know how to use it, but at the same time, you should use it wisely. Thank you for learning.